Part 17. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tien. Chapter 161. Although Su Wenyu was tired, there were still some things that needed to be arranged. Luzayashi and the others came here in her carriage in the morning, and they would definitely do the same when they returned. However, she could not return now, so she had to ask Madame Su to arrange to send them back. Luzayashi was a little worried when she heard that Su Wenyu was not feeling well. After what happened today, the relationship between the few people became closer, and they seemed to have formed an alliance, and they all expressed their concern for Su Wenyu. "Mother Yu, are you okay? Is the baby in your belly okay? Otherwise, we will not go back and take care of you here." Luzayashi was the first to express her intention to stay, and the other two also expressed this intention. Not only because of their previous friendship, but also because of the attitude of the county magistrate's wife and the general's wife today, they all wanted to curry favor with Su Wenyu. "No need, my mother is here, and there are Zioxi and Chen Mama, they will take good care of me, you don't have to worry." Su Wenyu knew in her heart that she rejected the kindness of the three people, and asked the carriage boy to send a letter home when he returned, so as not to worry Hanyu. Hanyu knew that she came to the county town today and would definitely go back at night. Madame Su sent the servant to the Su mansion to report the news, and then accompanied Su Wenyu back to the house in the city. Because Master Su and his family would come from time to time, there were servants cleaning the house at any time, and the things inside were still complete, so there was no need to buy anything else. Hanyu saw that Su Wenyu had not returned, and after waiting for a while, he could not hold his temper. After the previous incidents, Hanyu knew that Zioxi and Nanny Chen would accompany Su Wenyu to the county town, so it should be fine, but he was still not at ease. He changed his clothes and was about to go to the road to pick someone up. Just as he was about to go out, he met the servant of the Su family. After asking about the situation, Hanyu frowned tightly. Although the servant of the Su family said that his wife was fine, just tired, he was still very worried, especially when he heard that his wife was pregnant with twins. He could not settle down. Even if the servant said that his mother-in-law was there to accompany her, Hanyu still decided to go to the city. He had to see his wife with his own eyes. And was originally very dissatisfied with Hanyu. Her daughter had wronged herself for him, and she only blamed Hanyu for being incompetent as a man. However, when she saw Hanyu rushing over anxiously with a worried look on his face, she said nothing and only asked the maid to take Hanyu to Su Wenyu's room. Hanyu only wanted to see his wife at this time. He first thanked his mother-in-law, asked about his wife's situation, and then followed the maid. Su Wenyu was much more energetic after waking up from a nap. It was just right for her to get up at night. When she got up, she found that the person who was supporting her was not right. It turned out to be Hanyu. "Husband, why are you here?" Su Wenyu asked with a happy smile on her face. Hanyu smiled and tapped Su Wenyu's nose. "My wife is not going back, so I have to come to accompany you. Besides, I heard that you are pregnant with twins this time. I am very worried. I have to see it with my own eyes to feel at ease. How do you feel now? Are you uncomfortable?" "I am just tired. Dealing with those ladies, there are so many things in a sentence. I have to pay attention all the time. It's a bit tiring. I will be fine after a good sleep." Su Wenyu leaned comfortably in Hanyu's arms and told Hanyu what happened today at the birthday party of the county magistrate's wife. She said all her thoughts and complaints in her heart, and she felt much better. Hanyu felt distressed when he heard it, and touched his wife's little head. He knew why his wife could endure the impatience to deal with those ladies. "Yu Niang, I know you want to make friends with those ladies for my sake, but you have to believe that your husband is not such a useless man. Even if you don't rely on these, you will achieve something and live a good life. You don't need to force yourself to do these things in the future. You just need to live happily every day. Besides, you are pregnant now, so it is not appropriate to spend too much time on it. Su Wenyu nodded, but did not listen to Hanyu's words completely. She knew that Hanyu was doing this for her good, and that was why she wanted to do something more, so she changed the subject. Husband, I have good news for you. I am pregnant with twins this time. I have 2 children in my belly. Are you happy? Su Wenyu smiled with her eyes curved when she mentioned this, full of joy and happiness. Hanyu hugged his wife tighter. Of course I'm happy. This way we will have 2 children, so you have to be obedient and take good care of the baby in your belly. Don't worry too much. Husband, don't worry, I know my limits. The baby in your belly is my baby. How dare I make any mistakes? I will definitely give birth to them and raise them up. If it's a girl, I'll find a good husband for her, and if it's a boy, I'll marry a beautiful wife. Su Wenyu was happy and didn't notice the worry and anxiety that flashed across Hanyu's face. Hanyu was happy when he heard that his wife was pregnant with twins. He felt that his wife was really amazing and a great blessing. Others could only get 1 at a time, but his wife got 2, which was beautiful. But when his wife fell asleep just now, he met the doctor and heard the doctor talk about the risks of getting pregnant with twins. The excitement and joy disappeared without a trace. Giving birth is like stepping into the gates of hell for a woman. Even normal childbirth is dangerous, let alone the fact that his wife was pregnant with 2 children at once, and it was her first child. The difficulty of childbirth can be imagined. Thinking about his somewhat pampered wife, who was still a child herself, how could he bear to let her suffer like that, not to mention the risk of losing her? Thinking of this, Hanyu was no longer looking forward to the baby in his wife's belly. He kissed his wife's forehead lovingly. He felt an impulse in his heart, and even wanted to not have a child, as long as his wife was safe and sound. But he couldn't say this, and it was impossible. Even his wife would never want to hear him say that he didn't want a child, otherwise she would definitely get angry with him. Husband, what are you thinking about? Why are you in a daze? Su Wenyu talked for a long time without seeing Hanyu's response. She looked up and saw Hanyu staring at her blankly, and she didn't know what he was thinking. Nothing, I'm thinking about the baby in your belly. Wife, how about I send you to live with my mother-in-law for a while, Hanyu suddenly said. Su Wenyu looked at Hanyu strangely, wondering why he suddenly thought of this. Husband, why did you send me back to my parents' home when I was fine? Didn't you say you missed your father-in-law and mother-in-law some time ago? I thought it would be good for you to go back and live with them for a while. You are pregnant with twins and need more careful care. I am usually in the military camp and don't go home often. I am worried about leaving you at home. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 162. What's there to worry about? I have Nanny Chen and Zioxi to take care of me. My mother also said that she would send me another nanny. There are enough people to take care of me. Just do your things peacefully. Don't worry, Su Wenyu said considerately. Although she missed her parents and brother, she was married now. Hanyu was the first in her heart. Besides, she had never heard of any married girl who often lived in her mother's house. Not to mention that it would be bad for her reputation if someone with ulterior motives used it to make trouble. If the Han family heard the news, her mother-in-law would probably be the first to come. Su Wenyu had said before that Yang would let her come with her only if she could take good care of herself. Wouldn't that be a slap in the face? Although she was diagnosed with twins, Su Wenyu would naturally have something to say to Yang, but she really didn't want to be so troublesome, and there was no need. Compared with living in her mother's house, she wanted to live with her husband more. This was her home. But you are pregnant with twins now. Maids and old women are not as safe as your mother-in-law in taking care of you. Just be obedient and stay at your mother's house. I will come to pick you up when I am free. Okay, Hanyu was actually reluctant to let his wife live at her mother's house, but he was most concerned about his wife's safety now, and everything else could be put aside. I said I wouldn't go. I'm fine. Why do I have to live at my mother's house? It's the same if I have one or two. It's just that my belly is a little bigger. I just need to be careful and there will be no problem. Why do you insist on me living at my mother's house? Don't you want to see me? Su Wenyu said, looking at Hanyu with suspicion, and some conspiracy theories in her mind. It was also because Mrs. Su did not tell Su Wenyu about the dangers of having twins. Mrs. Su thought that it was not easy to have twins, and she was afraid that telling these things would cause a psychological burden to Su Wenyu. Hanyu also agreed with his mother-in-law's idea. The wife was already worried when she was pregnant. If she was thinking about it, it would not be good for herself or the baby in her belly. It would be better not to tell them, and the people around them should pay more attention to take care of them. Of course not, I'm doing this for your own good. Hanyu saw his wife looking at him suspiciously, and he knew that his wife had started to think about it again. This really bothered him, so he looked at his wife frankly. Su Wenyu stared at Hanyu for a moment, but didn't see anything, so she retracted her gaze, but she refused to listen to Hanyu, and instead had a rebellious mind, that is, she didn't want to follow Hanyu's wishes. What do you mean by for my own good? I said I won't go, and I won't go. Can't you hear me? Su Wenyu was a little irritable when she was not satisfied. She felt that Hanyu's reaction was a little wrong. Now think about it, when she said that she was pregnant with twins, Hanyu's reaction was too calm, and he didn't show any surprise at all. Instead, she was the only one who was happy. Does this mean that Hanyu didn't expect this at all? How can this be? Tell me, do you dislike the baby in my belly? Otherwise, why did you react so coldly when you heard that I was pregnant with twins? I think you don't dislike children, but the baby in my belly. I know that's it. Su Wenyu's tears flowed down without warning, and the tears kept flowing, and began to overflow. Su Wenyu's negative emotions reached the extreme. She knew that this was wrong, but she couldn't control it. Thinking of the things in her previous life, she imagined that her child was not liked by Hanyu and was abused by her stepmother. She felt so distressed. She worked so hard in this life just to have a family and to love her children well, but Hanyu didn't like her children. Such thoughts lingered in her mind and lingered. She was a little bit obsessed, and the obsession of her previous life was buried too deep in her heart, and it burst out at once with this opportunity. Hanyu was just worried about his wife, so he persuaded her to follow his arrangement and live in her parents' home for a while. He didn't know how it turned out like this. Hearing his wife's complaints one by one, saying that he didn't like their child, and the way she cried out of control, he felt very wronged and distressed, and was even more worried that she would cry herself to death. Wife, don't cry, I don't dislike our child, that's our baby, how could I not like it? I'm just too worried about you. It's said that having a child is dangerous. I don't want you to be in danger because of the child, so I reacted like that. Don't get me wrong, Hanyu said while patting Su Wenyu's back to comfort her. Really? You don't dislike the child, you're just worried about me, Su Wenyu asked while wiping her tears, looking pitiful, which made Hanyu's heart break into pieces. How could there be such a lovely little thing, who was obviously unreasonable, but made people love it so much and feel so soft-hearted? Of course, how could I not like my own child? It's just that you are the most important in my heart. Even the child is not as important as you, Hanyu continued to say, not caring how corny these words were, but they were his true thoughts. Liar, you only know how to say nice things to coax me, who knows if what you said is true. Pregnant women's tempers come and go quickly, and it was also some of Hanyu's words that soothed Su Wenyu's worries that were originally buried in her heart. Su Wenyu laughed while talking, and felt a little embarrassed, buried her head in Hanyu's arms, hiding and refusing to come out. Hanyu really laughed this time. With a child in her belly, his wife herself became a child. He coaxed his wife, who was still sobbing softly, and Hanyu concealed the worry and anxiety in his eyes. He didn't mention sending his wife to her parents' home again, so as not to touch his wife's sensitive nerves again. Anyway, he tried to find a way to spend more time home. No matter how important things outside are, they can't compare to his wife. Su heard from the servants that Su Wenyu and Hanyu were having a big fight, so she ran over worriedly. When she arrived at the door, she saw the couple talking and laughing. The son-in-law was coaxing his daughter in a low voice, without any reluctance. He wanted to treat his daughter as a treasure. He smiled and shook his head, and was a little envious. Only then did he feel that his daughter had really married the right person. In a woman's life, the most important thing is not wealth and glory, but to have someone who knows you and is willing to tolerate and pamper you. Su Wenyu didn't notice someone coming, but Hanyu noticed it when Mrs. Su came over. However, he didn't care about showing this side in front of his mother-in-law. Seeing his mother-in-law stop at the door for a while and then quietly leave, Hanyu knew that his mother-in-law must be more satisfied with him than ever before. Originally, Anne planned to send her daughter back the next day. She was worried about her daughter before, but with Hanyu around, there was no need to do so, and she didn't want to get in between the young couple and be annoying. "Young master, what are you looking at? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 163. Hanyu was worried about Su Wenyu before, and had asked someone to ask for leave, so there was no need to rush back. Su Wenyu didn't want to go back so early, and wanted to do some shopping. It's not easy to go out when pregnant. If it wasn't for the county magistrate's wife's birthday, Hanyu would definitely not agree to her coming. What's more, after what happened yesterday, she was pregnant with twins, and she probably wouldn't have the chance to come to the county before the children were born. From what Hanyu said, it was clear that he wanted to keep her at home to avoid accidents. Even if she wanted to object, she probably couldn't beat Hanyu, a black-bellied and calculating guy, and she could only be eaten alive in the end. Don't think that she had the upper hand in yesterday's incident and made Hanyu change his mind. In fact, Hanyu himself was not firm in his heart, so he finally followed her wishes. Moreover, she also valued the child in her belly and was willing to make sacrifices for the child. Naturally, it was safer. Occasionally, she would have a little temper with Hanyu as a vent to train Hanyu's patience. She couldn't really do anything stupid that would make her regret it. "Husband, let's not go back yet. I still have a lot of things to buy. Since I went to Xinluo town, I have been staying in the town and have never been anywhere. This time I am in the county, so of course I have to buy everything," Su Wenyu said as she calculated what to buy. Hanyu looked at his daughter-in-law's enthusiastic look and had a headache again. "Wife, if you want to buy anything, just let the servants buy it. You are pregnant and it's not good to be tired." Hanyu learned from the previous lesson and talked to Su Wenyu in a negotiating tone, for fear that he would accidentally touch his wife's rebellious nerves and go against him. He really couldn't afford to offend a pregnant woman, couldn't beat her, scold her, or touch her. If he said a few harsh words, he would lose his golden beans, which made him feel distressed. "It's true. I'm very energetic this time, so I just want to walk around. I won't get tired. If I get tired, I won't go shopping. Anyway, with you by my side, I'm not afraid of any accidents." If Su Wenyu was alone with Nanny Chen and Zioxi, she wouldn't have the heart to go shopping. For the sake of safety, with Hanyu around, she didn't have such concerns. I don't know if Han Yu was so powerful in his previous life that he climbed from a farmer to the position of prime minister, or if Han Yu was so responsible and capable during these days. Su Wenyu felt that Han Yu was reliable and safe, as if she didn't have to worry or consider anything with him around. Han Yu's eyes twitched a little. What was this saying? There wouldn't be any accidents when he was around. It seemed that he was not just ordinary in his wife's heart. This was simply blind worship. His wife worshipped him to this extent. Should he be happy or not? Anyway, I just want to go. Do you think it's okay? Su Wenyu held Han Yu's hand, her tone was so coquettish. Now that An had gone back, she dared to make trouble for Han Yu. Otherwise, if her mother knew, she would definitely say that she was worrying and nagging her about being pregnant. Okay, of course, my wife has said it, so how can it not be okay? Han Yu said helplessly. He had no choice but to agree. Otherwise, she would definitely have some tricks waiting for him. He really couldn't stand the people coming and going on the street. He should just serve his aunt well and be more careful so that no one would bump into him. Su Wenyu saw that Han Yu really agreed, and she wanted to jump up and kiss Han Yu happily, but this idea was just a thought. First of all, it was not appropriate to have so many people around. She was a pregnant woman now, and she couldn't use it violently. However, she smiled sweetly, which made Han Yu's frustration disappear. He completely became a wife slave. Wife, be careful, follow me, walk slowly, don't walk so fast. Han Yu wiped his sweat. For the first time, he realized how tiring it was to accompany a pregnant woman shopping. Su Wenyu didn't really shop for a long time. She bought the things she was asked to choose, and left the rest to Zioxi and Chen Ma. She didn't really shop to her heart's content. The carriage stopped beside her. Feeling a little tired, she asked Han Yu to help her get on the carriage. She leaned lazily on Han Yu, opened the curtains and looked at the surrounding scenery, waiting for Chen Ma and Zioxi to finish shopping. Sikongling's eyes accidentally swept over and he was attracted by the familiar figure. He had only seen it once, but he kept thinking about it, as if he had seen it thousands of times. He even felt a sense of guilt and throbbing deep in his heart, which touched his heart and made him unable to forget it. "Young master, what are you looking at?" Qingzu asked curiously. Seeing that the master did not answer, he did not dare to say anything. He just followed Sikongling's gaze. The girl, no, the woman was so beautiful that people could not forget the world. It seemed that he had seen her somewhere before. A light flashed in his mind. Wasn't it at Lingyan Temple? He remembered that the young master seemed to be a little distracted that day. Could it be because of this woman? This is bad. Not only did the woman say that she was married to someone else, but her belly was bulging, obviously she was pregnant. If the young master liked an ordinary woman, it would be fine. At most, he could think of a way to cover it up. With their family status, it would not be a big deal. But it happened to be a pregnant woman. Not to mention whether he could think of a way, this was a bad thing. The man next to the woman should be her husband, and he didn't look like someone who was easy to mess with. "Sir, the person we have an appointment with is still waiting, let's hurry over," Qingzu said as he bravely stood in front of Sikongling, deliberately blocking Sikongling's gaze. Sikongling glared at him coldly, which made him shudder, but he didn't move away. As a loyal servant, he couldn't let the young master continue to indulge in this. "Qingzu, what are you doing? You have no eyes. Why are you blocking me? Get out of the way." Sikongling frowned, very unhappy. "Master, please wake up and don't do stupid things. That woman is already pregnant with a child. There are so many beautiful women. If you like to look like this, I will immediately search for you according to your appearance. Master, you can't be attracted to a pregnant woman, if..." Qingzu was kicked away by Sikongling before he finished speaking. Sikongling looked at his personal servant with a black face, What nonsense are you talking about? Your master, I am a romantic, not a vulgar woman. Women can like it, but it's not like you're interested in a pregnant woman. If you don't shut up, I'll sell you this careless little guy, and it will make my ears hurt. Yes, yes, slave, shut up. King Zhu immediately shut up after saying that. Although the master meant his words as a joke and never really sold him, he did not dare not to take it seriously, as his life as a slave was in danger. In the hands of the master, since the master has said so, as long as he doesn't fall in love with the pregnant woman, he hides aside honestly, but he is very confused in his heart, since the master has not been interested in the pregnant woman. In my mind, I keep staring at others to see what they are doing. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 164. Su Wenyu leaned on Han Yu's arms, feeling a little uncomfortable for some reason. She tossed and turned for a few times. She always felt that someone was staring at her. She looked outside but didn't find anything. Suddenly, she looked up and saw the person in the window on the opposite floor. Her face turned pale. How could it be him? How could that person appear here? He hadn't appeared in the previous life, but he appeared now. The look that made her fidget just now should be that person. Su Wenyu's heart was confused and she lost her sense of proportion. She didn't know what to do. She was afraid that the appearance of that person would disrupt her life. She loved Han Yu and her children very much. No matter in this life or the next, she had no intention of having anything to do with that person. The suffering she suffered because of that person in the previous life was enough. Han Yu has been paying attention to his wife, and even the smallest movement can't escape his eyes. Seeing his wife's face turn pale when she glanced out of the car window, he looked over sharply. Unlike Su Wenyu's omission, Han Yu met Sikong Yu at a glance. The two men had a moment of confrontation, and then they retracted their gazes. Sikong Ling hooked his lips playfully. He didn't expect that such a small place like Xinyi County still had a person hidden. The man just now should not be underestimated. He didn't miss the shocked look of the woman when she saw him. Sikong Yu had never met that woman in his memory. The last time he saw that woman in Lingyan Temple was the first time he saw that woman, but the woman didn't see him. Then such a reaction is hard to explain. The woman is not another woman and it is impossible for her to deliberately act to attract his attention. What is the reason? It's really interesting. Sir, it's just a woman who's pregnant. What's so good about it? You have so many concubines in your backyard, all of them are very beautiful, and all of them are waiting for your love. King Zhu always reminds her master that the woman is pregnant. The master's reaction is really too abnormal. Even though he just said that he would not have any thoughts about the woman, King Zhu is still worried. Nonsense, are you blind? Those women in the backyard are not as beautiful as this young lady. Her temperament is so extraordinary. What's more rare is that her reaction is so interesting. Sir, I am really interested. Sikong Ling was in a good mood. I don't know if he said this deliberately to scare his servant, or if he really had such an idea. Sir, that won't do. Didn't you say you wouldn't be interested in a pregnant woman? That's obscene. King Zhu brought up what Sikong Ling had said before. Sikong Ling kicked King Zhu again. Get lost. Do you need to teach me how to do things? Here, Han Yu hugged his wife, whose face suddenly turned pale, and was very puzzled. He felt that his wife's reaction was abnormal. Even if she saw a strange man, she couldn't be so scared. Besides, his wife was not a shy person. There were other strangers outside the car window. His wife didn't react when she saw him. Could it be because of that man? She looked at her wife's expression and it seemed that she knew the man. She felt that it was impossible. He checked that his wife was strictly controlled by her mother-in-law before she married into the Han family. She rarely left the Su mansion. Even if she occasionally ran out mischievously, she was followed by her two uncles. There should be no problem, and it was even more impossible to explain the strange man. But the first reaction of a person after being frightened is exactly the most real. He was really strange in his heart. It was not easy to ask his wife about this, especially since his wife's pale face was a bit scary now. "Wife, what's wrong with you? Why are you so pale? Did you see something scary?" Han Yu asked tentatively, more worried about his wife's health. Su Wenyu shook her head and nestled in Han Yu, as if she could feel safe in this way and no longer be affected by that person. She said muffledly, "Close the window quickly." Han Yu closed the window according to Su Wenyu's instructions. Seeing that his wife's face was still pale, he frowned. "Are you still uncomfortable? Otherwise, ask a doctor to see you. I can't rest assured that you are like this." Su Wenyu still shook her head and didn't let Han Yu move. She was frightened and lost her sense of proportion when she suddenly saw that person without any defense. Now she has recovered and there is no need to ask a doctor. I just don't know if Han Yu has discovered her abnormality. However, with Han Yu's cleverness, he should have discovered it, but she didn't want to explain. It involved things in her previous life, and she had no way to explain it. She had to pretend to be confused and nestled in Han Yu's arms honestly, and fell asleep in a daze. Han Yu helplessly looked at his little wife sleeping in his arms, with an inexplicable expression on his face. He didn't know what he was thinking, but there was no mistaking that he was doting on her. When Su Wenyu woke up, she was already at home in Silla town. Han Yu sat beside her, reading the book of military tactics intently. Su Wenyu didn't disturb Han Yu, but looked at him silently, thinking about what happened on the street today. She was very upset. Since she noticed that look today, does it mean that the man has set his sights on her? Han Yu realized that his wife had woken up after reading an article, and quickly put down the book. Seeing that his wife's face was still a little pale, he was not very relieved. "I feel better. Do you want to get up and eat something? There is chicken soup in the kitchen. I haven't eaten for a while. Drink a bowl of chicken soup to fill my stomach." Chicken soup again. Su Wenyu frowned when she heard about the chicken soup. She was not very happy. She was really tired of drinking chicken soup all the time these days. Han Yu seemed not to see Su Wenyu's reaction. He got up and went outside to order someone to send chicken soup over. Chicken soup is the best for nourishing the body. Even if his wife is not happy, she should drink more. The chicken soup was sent over, but Han Yu personally brought it over to feed Su Wenyu. After testing the temperature, he scooped a spoonful of chicken soup and sent it to Su Wenyu. "Come on, my dear wife, drink a sip. You have 2 children in your belly now, so you need more nutrition." Su Wenyu saw that Han Yu had sent the chicken soup to her mouth. She couldn't help but give face even though she was a little disgusted with the taste of the chicken soup. Who knew that as soon as the chicken soup entered her mouth, Su Wenyu couldn't help the nausea in her heart. She vomited out not only the chicken soup, but also the food she had eaten before. She vomited all over the sky. After vomiting, she looked unhappy and had no strength at all. She leaned softly in Han Yu's arms. Su Wenyu's reaction scared Han Yu so much that his face changed. He immediately asked someone to call a doctor. Although he heard Nanny Chen say that this was a normal reaction of a pregnant woman, he still couldn't feel at ease. She said it was a normal reaction during pregnancy, but she was fine for more than 3 months before. How could she suddenly have this reaction? Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 165. After the doctor came to see him, he also said that Su Wenyu had a reaction during pregnancy. As for why he had no reaction in the past few months, he explained that everyone's body type had different reactions during pregnancy. However, Han Yu always felt that this was not the case. He thought of what happened on the street today. That scene made me feel inexplicably irritable. After listening to the doctor's words, So when Ayu knew that she was affected by her own emotions, so the pregnancy reactions that she had suffered through in her previous life also came with her. The physical torture made her feel even more uncomfortable. Fortunately, Hanyu was by her side. Looking at Hanyu's worried eyes and taking care of her meticulously, Suwenayu felt much better and held Hanyu in her arms without letting go. "Ms. Sir, I feel so uncomfortable. Please don't go away and stay with me, okay?" Suwenayu begged pitifully. As soon as she saw that person, she would think of the feeling of emptiness and loneliness in those years. Only when she saw Hanyu was there she felt at ease next to her. Although she was exhausted and sleepy, Suwenayu refused to close her eyes and looked at Hanyu helplessly. Hanyu sighed when he saw his wife sleeping. He had already said that he would not leave, but his wife still looked unbelieving and insisted on sticking by him. Hanyu had no choice but to take off his outer robe and stay with him. His wife was asleep, but Hanyu was still very impressed by his dependent and clingy reaction. The previous irritability was gone and he focused on coaxing his wife to sleep. Seeing Hanyu like this, Suwenayu grinned and took the initiative to shrink into Hanyu's arms. She smelled Hanyu's scent and felt relieved. In addition, Hanyu patted her behind like a child. I took the photo and fell asleep not long after. Hanyu was tired of following Suwenayu's tossing. Seeing that Suwenayu was asleep, he kissed Suwenayu's forehead and hugged the person in his arms who also fell asleep. When the two couples woke up, it was already evening. Grandma Chen and Xiao 11 had been waiting outside for a long time. When they saw their master woke up, they immediately came in and told him about Su's sending someone over. Suwenayu had known that her mother would send a nanny over, so she nodded and asked Nanny Chen to make arrangements. However, Nanny Chen did not retreat in response, but looked at Hanyu. "Master, Madam, I have sent more than its mammy, there are several people in total, or I'll just bring them over and kowtow to them before they're distributed." After receiving Hanyu's approval, Nanny Chen went down and brought the people in. Suwenayu blinked and looked at the crowd in front of her, a little dumbfounded. She looked at Nanny Chen and then at Hanyu. What was going on? My mother only said to send me a nanny. Why are there so many more people? There are only 4 maids. There are 5 more. Isn't it the nursing home at home? Why are they here too? Because the deeds of several people were sent here together, Suwenayu would not misunderstand that they were escorting the grandma. They were the servants given to her by her mother, but what did she want with so many servants? Money is needed to support them, even if they don't need anything else. The monthly income is indispensable, and their home is an existing courtyard. Where can they live? Suwenayu thought for a while, and planned to return the person to the Su family. I know my mother means well. If my mother picked you up and sent them here, you must be good ones. But you have also seen the situation here. My family is really not very well off. It's a grievance for you to stay here. Why don't you stay here, go back to the Su mansion and work as an errand? I will explain the situation to my mother, and she will not blame you. As Suwenayu said that, she went to sort out the pile of deeds, only intending to pick out the nannies. For the sake of the child in her belly, Suwenayu would keep the person even if she didn't like it. She saw that the nanny's behavior and speech were a bit rigid. Forget it, let's use it for now. It's really inappropriate to take her back to the Su mansion and ask my mother to change it for her. Little did he know that this person had accepted it, and it was impossible to change it. When several maids and nurses heard that Suwenayu wanted to send them back, they immediately knelt down. When they came out, they had already obtained the mistress. If the lady didn't accept them, the Su mansion would not accept them and would only sell them. Go out, and the madam must have anticipated the young lady's temper. She had already told them what to do, and also sent a message asking them to stay and listen to the uncle's instructions. Miss, before the slaves came out, madam has already spoken. If Miss doesn't accept us, she will sell us out. Moreover, Madam has given us enough monthly salary for 2 years. There is no need for Miss to give us more in the past 2 years. Suwenayu choked, and then said, even if I am given monthly money, look at my place. The courtyard is almost full as soon as we enter. How can there be room for so many people? Mother, don't worry, I won't let her betray you. Suwenayu really didn't want so many servants, not to mention whether she could live in it or not. She felt very constrained. When she was still a girl in her parents' house, there were so many servants in the house, and her parents looked down upon her. She can't even leave the house without her brother talking. Although she is now the mistress of the house and can control the servants, she still doesn't like having too many servants around her. It would be nice to have Zioxy. Now that she is pregnant, there are too many servants. She had 2 nuns, the 2 old ladies and maids that Hanyu had bought back earlier, but she didn't let them come near to serve her, and let Aunt Chen and Xiao 11 arrange it. When the servants who were sent heard what Suwenayu said, they all looked at Hanyu, waiting for him to speak. Hanyu naturally understood what it meant, and it was nothing more than an explanation from his mother-in-law. Hanyu took the body deed from Suwenayu's hand. Suwenayu thought that Hanyu had the same idea as her and wanted to send people back. However, Hanyu put away the body deed, including the new arrival. That one from Grandma Li. Suwenayu looked at Hanyu in surprise, wondering what Hanyu was doing. Hanyu looked at his wife's surprised eyes and felt a little amused. He thought his mother-in-law was really helpful. Not only was she efficient, but she also sent enough people to solve his worries. Not to mention these people, he would not mind if more people came. Originally, his mother-in-law only planned to send a nanny over, fearing that his wife would be unhappy if she sent too many. But he was worried, so he begged his mother-in-law to send a few more. When he was not at home, there was also a guarantee. There were also nannies. He specially asked his mother-in-law to pick those who were experienced but old-fashioned and unwilling to change. At that time, he would not be afraid that his wife would be disobedient and mess around when he was not at home. With a nanny watching over him, he could rest assured. Of course, these thoughts could not be known to his wife, but his mother-in-law should have understood what he meant. She sent people over in the afternoon. Suwenayu didn't know Hanyu was planning this, otherwise she would definitely not agree. But now that she saw Hanyu had accepted the indenture, she blinked her big watery eyes and said, "Husband, are you going to send them back in person?" "That's fine. I'm not feeling well right now, so you can talk to mother about it." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 166. Han Yuking coughed, "Since it was sent by my mother-in-law, it is her wish. Let's accept it. Don't worry about the rest. I will arrange a place for them." He accepted the contract with a high-sounding smile and had no intention of giving it to Suwenayu again. Hanyu didn't say that he had already found a place to stay. When he came back today, he went out for a while Suwenayu was asleep and took the nearby house. The courtyard with 2 entrances has been rented and is currently being cleaned and decorated. Later, he plans to let his wife move into the courtyard. The yard here has been rented for a year, and he has already made arrangements and has no intention of returning. What's more, the vegetable patch in the back is a vegetable patch that his wife has put a lot of thought into and is still waiting to come back to pick vegetables. Of course, these words cannot be told to the daughter-in-law. Although the daughter-in-law sometimes looks stupid, sometimes she is very shrewd. Now that I tell her, she can immediately see the clues and guess what is going on. It would be strange not to make trouble with him. The maids and nursing staff breathed a sigh of relief after listening to Hanyu's words. No wonder the madam said that she would listen to her uncle in the end. It turned out to be this. It seemed that the madam and her uncle had discussed it. But it's really not necessary. There are only two of us. Why do we need so many servants to serve us? There are also several nursing homes. Do we need nursing homes here? There is really no need, Su Wenyu said anyway. She just didn't want so many people to stay, and there might be spies arranged by her parents here. She would repay everything later, and she couldn't let her mother talk about it to death. It is necessary. The world is getting more and more chaotic now. I can rest assured if there are more nursing homes at home. The child in your belly, our baby, will also be protected, right? Han Yu had already made up his mind. Those who might want to go back can only persuade their daughter-in-law. But I don't like so many servants at home. My mother used to let the servants look at me very hard. This is not allowed and that is not allowed. It makes me depressed just thinking about it. Su Wenyu felt that what Han Yu said was not unreasonable. In this world, it's getting more and more chaotic. She understands better after experiencing what happened in her previous life, but there is some resistance and conflict in her heart. Han Yu naturally saw it and thought that so many people were here just to watch you. Otherwise, my wife would have been much more delicate when she was at her parents' house. I have never heard of anything happening since she got married. Big and small things happened every once in a while, and his heart's ability to bear them was not that good. Thinking so in his heart, Han Yu persuaded him, "What's so frustrating? At that time, you were still young and ignorant, so your mother naturally had to take more care of you. Now that you are married and have become the mistress of the house, all these people, it's your responsibility, you have the final say. It's not a good idea to have so many helpers for you. Well, since you said so, I won't send you back. I'll leave it to you to arrange the accommodation. I don't care." Su Wenyu actually understood the benefits of taking in these people. If Han Yu climbs up the ladder in the future, the higher one is, the more servants there will be in the family. Those bought from outside are of course not as good as those raised in such a house. There is no need to worry about loyalty or rules. Su Wenyu's words were exactly what Han Yu wanted. As long as his wife agreed, everything else would be easy to handle. Seeing that Han Yu was so attentive, Su Wenyu immediately arranged the matter and felt uncomfortable again. This matter must be in line with Han Yu's wishes. Maybe Han Yu and her mother conspired, otherwise it would be such a coincidence. Han Yu promised her not to send her back to her parents' home, so her parents sent her over. It was full of tricks. If I had known it, I would have bothered more. It's not wrong for pregnant people to be pretentious, not to mention she is still having twins, who can be as powerful as her. Su Wenyu thought about this, because she temporarily put aside the troubles that the man had, and thought about how to compete with Han Yu, but she became more energetic, which Han Yu liked to see. After what happened yesterday, Han Yu found that the depression that had finally disappeared from his wife's brows was raised again. He looked anxious. People who are pregnant with children don't have enough energy to begin with. How can they have so much thoughts, let alone the baby in their belly? With 2 children, it is inherently dangerous. Han Yu spent a solid day with Su Wenyu, arranging everything at home, and went to the military camp for duty the next day. There was nothing he could do about it. If he wanted to climb up and become a master, he would have to work twice as hard. Work hard, not to mention that it is a troubled time now. Even if you are in your position, you have many things to do, and it is not so leisurely. Su Wenyu knew that Han Yu was working hard, so she made trouble with him when Han Yu was at home and enjoyed her rights as a pregnant woman. In order to let Han Yu do things with peace of mind, she deliberately concealed her stomach discomfort when Han Yu went out in the morning and waited until Han Yu. As soon as I left, I vomited all over the place. Han Yu took a day off, and was even more busy when he returned. He didn't come back for several days. Fortunately, there were servants sent by the Su family. There were so many people at home taking care of his wife, so he could feel more at ease. He just waited until he was back from work. At home, Han Yu felt very distressed when he saw that his wife's face had lost weight in a few days, and her small body, which was originally not very strong, was now even more frail. At this time, Su Wenyu had just finished vomiting and fell asleep. Han Yu rubbed his wife's little face. The baby fat on it was gone, leaving only a pointed chin. She probably didn't sleep well, and her eyes were green shadows appeared below, and the whole person looked haggard, and his breathing became much lighter when he fell asleep. "Madam, are you still not eating well? Why are you so thin in just a few days? How do you take care of me?" Han Yu lowered his voice and asked the two nuns. There was a bit of majesty and gentleness in his words, although he did not think that his mother-in-law was specially chosen. The mother-in-law who was sent out did not care about her daughter-in-law, but it was a fact that she did not take good care of her. "My lord, the madam has not been sleeping well at night these days and wakes up from time to time. She is not energetic during the day and has severe pregnancy reactions. She vomits everything she eats. I have tried many methods based on my experience, but none of them work. I see that this is not going to work, so I specially asked someone to invite Dr. Lin to come." Dr. Lin said. Madame Li paused and looked at Madame Chen. She was a little hesitant about whether to say it. After all, they were servants from the Su family. Although Madame Su gave them to Madame and they were now servants of the Han family, she was biased towards Su Wenyu from the bottom of her heart. She didn't know if some words would be good or bad for her Madame. But it was not a solution for Madame to continue like this. "What did Dr. Lin say? Why don't you tell me everything? Are you going to wait until I use a stick before you tell me?" Han Yu was originally worried about his wife's health. Seeing that Madame Chen and Madame Li were still hesitating for some reason, he was annoyed and his voice unconsciously increased. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 167. Su Wenyu, who was sleeping, didn't know if she was disturbed by Han Yu's voice. She frowned and moaned. Han Yu thought his wife was woken up by him, but he saw that his wife moved a few times but didn't open her eyes, but she slept very uneasily. Su Wenyu's condition has not been very good these days. Nanny Chen and Nanny Li are worried and have been serving Su Wenyu. Therefore, when they saw Su Wenyu like this and saw Han Yu frowning, they explained, "Madam has been like this these days. She sleeps lightly and is easily startled. She doesn't sleep well. Sometimes she cries while sleeping. In such a situation, I am afraid that Madam will be haunted by nightmares, so I have to wake her up." Han Yu didn't expect his wife's condition to be so serious. Because he was worried, the doctor examined his wife, and then asked some experienced women, and also checked medical books. He was relieved to know that pregnant women's pregnancy reactions were indeed like this. Otherwise, no matter how busy he would not stay in the military camp for a few days. What did Dr. Lin say? Dr. Lin was the best doctor in Xinyi County. He came from the capital to seek refuge with the Su family and had a good background. Han Yu wanted to hear what Dr. Lin said before thinking of a solution. Dr. Lin said that Madam was overthinking, fearful and worried. She had something on her mind that she couldn't vent, so she was depressed. In addition, she was pregnant, which led to Madam's current condition. The pregnancy reaction would become more serious. Dr. Lin also said that Madam was pregnant with twins. The babies in her belly needed more nutrients from the mother. Madam was suffering from this. Sooner or later, she would not be able to bear it. If we don't find a way to resolve Madam's worries, I'm afraid that Madam will be in danger in the near future. Madam Li couldn't care less. Madam's condition was already very dangerous. She said everything that Dr. Lin said in one breath. Sure enough, the man's face didn't look good. Although Nanny Li had been here for a short time, she knew from Nanny Chen that the master was very good to the lady, and was very considerate and doting on her on weekdays. There was no concubine or other things that would upset the lady. Everything was fine. She and Nanny Chen were also wondering why the lady was so worried and depressed. Where did so many worries come from? I'm afraid it was related to Han Yu, so she hesitated whether to tell Dr. Lin what he said before. Han Yu guessed that it was related to what happened that day, and it was true. However, he didn't expect that what happened that day would have such a deep impact on his wife. In just a few days, his wife had tormented herself like this. He paid special attention to it that morning, and he left when he saw that his wife seemed to have let it go. Little did he know that it was a false illusion made by Su Wenyu to make him feel at ease. You all go down, Han Yu ordered in a deep voice, and asked them to go to the kitchen to make some food that was easy to digest and less oily, and send it to him when he wanted it later. Seeing this, Nanny Chen and Nanny Li could only suppress their worries and retreat. However, the master did not ask anything other than the doctor's words, which showed that he knew what was in the lady's mind. As servants, they were worried about the matters between the masters, but they could do nothing. They only hoped that the master could persuade the lady to let her go. If not, they could only go to the Su mansion to invite the former master over. They could not bear to see the lady go down like this. After Nanny Chen and Nanny Li went down, Han Yu sat next to Su Wenyu, staring at his wife's face for a long time. The news he had asked people to find out in the past few days flashed through his mind. He could not figure out how his wife knew Sikong Ling. There was no intersection between the two people, not to mention that this was Sikong Ling's first time in Xinyi. This was all after his wife married into the Han family. Han Yu was not sure before, but since his wife married him, Han Yu was very sure that his wife had no contact with Sikong Ling. This was strange. Han Yu couldn't figure it out, so he attributed it to his wife's mysterious side. For example, he didn't believe that his wife had memorized the 2 military books when she was a child. There were too many loopholes, but he couldn't explain why his wife could memorize these 2 books. Thinking of this, Han Yu couldn't help but think of the strange dream his wife had told him before. What happened in the dream that his wife said at that time has now come true. Even his father-in-law and 2 uncles believe it. Is there really such a bizarre thing in the world? Otherwise, how to explain the mysterious things of his wife? Han Yu became more and more absorbed in thinking, and he didn't even notice that Su Wenyu woke up. He was still entangled in some things that couldn't be explained by his logical thinking. If the dream was true, then Sikong Ling must be the person who appeared in the dream, and judging from his wife's reaction, it was obvious that he had a deep connection with Sikong Ling. Moreover, he heard from the 2 maids that his wife had nightmares these days, and he was afraid that Sikong Yu had done something that scared his wife. Thinking of this, Han Yu felt uncomfortable. "Husband, what are you thinking about? You were so absorbed that you didn't even hear me calling you." Su Wenyu had come to Han Yu at this time, stretched out her white and tender palm and waved it in front of Han Yu's eyes, muttering, because her face became thinner, her eyes looked bigger. "Wife, you are awake, how do you feel? Are you feeling uncomfortable now?" Han Yu came back to his senses and saw his wife leaning in front of him. His face softened and he first cared about his wife's health. "I have been so pitiful these days. I vomited everything I ate. My pregnancy reaction is too severe. I don't know if there is any way to cure it. I can't stand it if it goes on like this." As Su Wenyu spoke, she looked at Han Yu with a worried look on his face and said, "But now I see that you are in a better mood and feel much more comfortable. Maybe the child in your belly misses you too. Please feel it and see if the child has been there these days grow up a little." After Su Wenyu finished speaking, she took Han Yu's big hand and put it on her belly. Seeing that his wife was so frizzy, Han Yu worriedly held her in his arms to prevent her from moving. With this hug, he felt that his wife had become much lighter, and the flesh that had finally grown was gone. "Daughter-in-law, I heard from Nanny Chen and Nanny Li that not only have you had severe pregnancy reactions these past few days, but you also have nightmares at night," and you can't eat well or sleep well. This won't work. As the saying goes, you think about something every day and think about it at night. Meng, tell me what you're afraid of, and I'll sort it out for you, and maybe it'll be fine, Han Yu asked tentatively, feeling his body stiffen in his arms. What are you afraid of? I have nothing to be afraid of. It's just that it's too hard to carry the baby and the pregnancy reactions are too severe, so I can't sleep well at night. Don't worry, the doctor said that as long as the pregnancy reactions pass, it will be fine. Yes, Su Wenyu denied it without thinking. How could she tell Han Yu that she had betrayed her husband in her previous life for that man? Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tian. Chapter 168. Han Yu knew that his wife would not admit it so easily, but it really didn't matter. Wouldn't it be guilty to deny what she did so quickly? What's more, he had made up his mind to let his wife talk about what was on her mind today, so his patience would naturally run out. Otherwise, if this went on, not even the wife would be able to bear it, not to mention the child in her belly. After Su Wenyu said that, she didn't say anything when she saw Han Yu. After waiting for a while, she couldn't help but look up at Han Yu, but she saw that Han Yu was also looking at her deeply, with a somewhat serious expression that she couldn't understand. My heart tightened, and I lowered my head. Naturally, Han Yu would not let Su Wenyu escape. With a strong movement of his arm, he turned Su Wenyu around to face him. Daughter-in-law, it seems that we have to explain something clearly today. I hope that we can all be honest and don't hide anything. After Han Yu said this, he saw Su Wenyu's face was not showing but her lips were tightly pursed, obviously his resistant attitude softened his tone again. Even if there is something you don't want to say, you can tell me directly that you don't want to say it, and don't make up lies to deceive me. Is that okay? After hearing what Han Yu said, Su Wenyu reluctantly nodded. Han Yu sighed, it's not that I want to force you. You should know what the doctor said. If you continue like this, the child in your belly will be in danger. Didn't you say that the child in your belly is our baby? Do you cherish them so much? Su Wenyu did know that Darlin did not avoid her when he said those words. He probably also meant to advise her to relax, so she felt a little unreasonable after hearing Han Yu's words. She was actually trying her best. No one knew how much she valued the child in her belly, but when she thought about that person and what happened in her previous life, she just couldn't get over it. In fact, what frightened Su Wenyu the most was not what happened in her previous life. Those things were just because she was afraid that Si Kongling's appearance would affect her current life and make her hard-won happiness disappear. In her last life, she was targeted by Si Kongling. Si Kongling used despicable means to get her. She was also obsessed and followed Si Kongling. As a result, she ruined the rest of her life and ended up with such a miserable life. Ending. Daughter-in-law, we are going to be together for the rest of our lives. Didn't you say that you would trust me and rely on me? You can tell me anything. No matter what happened in the past, you will always be my wife and my child mother. I will blame you. Han Yu was afraid that Su Wenyu would not say it because she was worried that he would be unhappy. When Su Wenyu heard what Han Yu said, she raised her head and glanced at Han Yu, as if to confirm the authenticity of Han Yu's words. What I said is true. No matter what happened, it was in the past. I believe that since you married me, you have had no other thoughts. You have only wanted to live a life with me. Everyone can make mistakes. When things happen, there is nothing that cannot be forgiven. Han Yu continued to encourage Su Wenyu. Su Wenyu looked at Han Yu's situation and made it clear that she wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. If she didn't explain something today, she would not be able to get through it. Moreover, she was also afraid that Han Yu would be thinking too much. Nanny Chen and Nanny Li were sure of what the doctor said. She told Han Yu that if she didn't handle it well, it would be bad for Han Yu to have a knot in his heart because of this incident. However, you still have to be careful about what you say. Su Wenayu's insistence has not changed. What happened to Si Kongling in her previous life must not be mentioned. No matter how lenient Han Yu is, he will not forgive a vain woman who cuckolded him. However, Si Kongling was a man enough to talk about some unimportant things with half-truths and half-falsehoods, especially to remind Han Yu to be on guard against Si Kongling, lest Si Kongling use his tactics on Han Yu. Ms. Sir, I really love our children and care about our family very much, but I'm afraid, we of you. Su Wenaya cried uncontrollably as she explained. When Han Yu saw his wife heaving such a sigh of relief, he was afraid that her daughter-in-law would hold on and refuse to say anything. Now she was obviously moved by him. It didn't matter if she cried. It was just a good way to vent the emotions in her heart, so as not to accumulate them in her heart. Su Wenaya lay in Han Yu's arms and cried for a long time. She stopped because she was afraid of hurting the child in her belly. Her eyelids were a little red and swollen from crying, but she felt much better. She calmed down and waited for Han Yu to ask questions. Daughter-in-law, do you know Si Kongling? Han Yu knew that his wife was ready and asked as soon as she opened her mouth. Su Wenayu's eyelids fluttered when she heard Han Yu mention Si Kongyu's name. He was worthy of being the prime minister in his previous life. However, he had already found out that person's name at a glance on the street that day. He must have also known about that person's identity. If it weren't for what happened in her previous life, there would be no way to investigate it, and I'm afraid she wouldn't be able to hide it at all. Seeing that Su Wenaya didn't ask who Si Kongyu was after hearing what he said, Han Yu's reaction was acquiescence. Judging from his previous reaction, it didn't look like he didn't recognize him. Otherwise, why would he be so scared and excited, even with some hatred? Fortunately, there are no other emotions. How do you know each other? Han Yu couldn't find out this. Han Yu once associated with Su Wenayu's mysterious things, but after all, he still didn't believe in those nihilistic things. Su Wenayu still remained silent, and Han Yu asked patiently, "Why don't you speak? Can't you speak?" Su Wenayu shook her head, "It's not that I can't say it, it's that I don't know how to say it. I'm afraid you won't believe it when I say it. I'm afraid not many people will believe this kind of thing." Han Yu heard Su Wenayu say this, and a deep color flashed in his eyes. If no one believes it, it means that things do not follow common sense. No need for others to believe it, I just believe you. Have you forgotten what I just said? Han Yu used a coaxing tone, and his wife was finally willing to speak, so he naturally couldn't let her back down. Actually, I told you that I once had a very real dream. In the dream, I seemed to have gone through a lifetime. I met Si Kongling in that dream, but not now, but a few years later, so I was so surprised to see Si Kongling. Han Yu felt that it was as expected when he heard Su Wenayu's explanation. Unlike before, he thought that Su Wenayu made it up to lie. This time, Han Yu believed it a little, because he really couldn't find any intersection between Su Wenayu and Si Kongling, but Su Wenayu's expression was not just surprise. "Then how did you meet? Did Si Kongling do anything scary to you after you met?" Han Yu always asked questions directly to the point, staring at Su Wenayu tightly, trying to interpret something from her reaction. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 169. I told you, are you really not angry? Su Wenayu confirmed to Han Yu again and received an encouraging look from Han Yu. Si Kongling is not a good person. He is just a romantic hypocrite. He especially likes to collect beauties. He has bad intentions towards me. Su Wenayu stared at Han Yu's expression as she said this. There was a ruthless and overbearing possessiveness, but he was not dissatisfied with her, and he felt a little relaxed. Being able to look at a pregnant woman shows that her character is not much better. It's just because of her good skin and good background. Otherwise, such a scoundrel would have been beaten to death on the street. You are right. Kong Ling is such a scumbag. I wish I could trample him to death. But my husband, you must be more careful in the future. Kong Ling is not only lustful, but also has many tricks. He is not an above-board person. He will always do whatever it takes to get what he wants. I'm afraid he will frame you. Su Wenyu was really worried. In her previous life, a few years later, Han Yu transferred his defense elsewhere and didn't care much about her. That's why Kong Ling didn't deal with Han Yu and instead focused on the Wang family. The situation is different now. Su Wenyu was afraid that Kong Ling would frame Han Yu, and Han Yu was unprepared, so she had to remind him that even if Han Yu had reached the position of prime minister in his previous life, he was still just a junior official from the 8th rank, and it would be easy for him to be careless. Framed. What did Kong Ling do to you? Han Yu asked. This was not a suspicion, but an affirmation. Otherwise, why would his wife be so worried, scared, and defensive? In that dream, you actually didn't like me very much. You thought I was too coquettish and you were very indifferent to me. Kong Ling focused on me, found out my situation, colluded with the Wang family, and defrauded me of my dowry. If you leave, it will sow discord between me and you. I am dissatisfied with your indifference to me, and I hate the Han family, so I divorced you in a fit of anger, and so did my mother-in-law's family. He was very unforgiving of me. I was isolated and helpless at that time. Kong Yu happened to show up at that time, caring about me and being kind to me. I didn't like him anymore, but I had to rely on him. Later. After Su Wenyu said this, she stopped talking. She could guess what happened next without saying anything. She looked up and saw that Han Yu's face was ugly and tight, but she didn't regret saying this. After all, Han Yu could definitely guess it with his mind. What, it is better to say it half-truth and half-falsely, to cut off Han Yu's suspicion and achieve Han Yu's purpose of guarding against Kong Ling, but I don't know if there are any side effects. Anyway, Han Yu treated her very badly in her last life, and was even colder than ordinary people. Even though there were many reasons of her own, Su Wenyu still held her breath in her heart after so long. Now in front of Han Yu's, after saying it to her face, no matter what Han Yu thought, she felt much more comfortable. Especially when she saw Han Yu's ugly face, Su Wenyu felt a faint sense of revenge in her heart. Although she knew that this was wrong, Han Yu now was not the same as in the previous life. Did Han Yu really breathe a sigh of relief? Su Wenyu's words had a big impact on Han Yu. Han Yu also understood his own temperament. If Su Wenyu had always been coquettish, he might have had that attitude. What his wife said was not impossible, but it was just a dream after all. He is not that Han Yu. He cares about his wife even more than he imagined. Just mentioning the words he and Li, Han Yu feels like a ball of cotton is stuck in his heart and he can't breathe. He can't even imagine Su Wenyu leaving. What would he be like? He naturally hated the man who coveted Su Wenyu. Su Wenyu's face fell when she saw Han Yu's cold face and didn't speak for a long time. "Ms. Sir, are you angry with me? I didn't mean it in the dream, I was just too angry and wanted to be angry with you." "Yeah, you said that on purpose, but you, ugh." Su Wenyu cried in grievance, and her tears fell down again as if she wanted no money. Han Yu sighed when he saw his wife looking so careful and aggrieved. "Daughter-in-law, don't cry. I didn't blame you. If I was really so cold to you in that dream, then it was me who was wrong. How can I blame you? But don't mention the words Heli again in the future. I have long said that since you married me, Han Yu, you are my Han Yu's son in life, and my Han Yu's ghost in death. I will never let you go until your death, even if you say angry words. Don't even think about leaving with another man. If you dare to do this, I will kill that man first, then break your legs and lock you up to see if you still have the ability to run away with other men. Hanyu was still coaxing at first, but later he became a little domineering, even threatening. Then what if you don't like me and don't want me anymore? Isn't that allowed? Wenyu would not be frightened and still asked. In her previous life, she and Kong Ling just left like that, but Hanyu seemed like nothing had happened. Like, not to mention coming to the door, even asking about it? Is she really that unimportant? Wenyu knew that it was wrong to dwell on things in her previous life, but she felt uncomfortable if she didn't ask about some things. Even if Hanyu's answers would definitely be different from those of Hanyu in his previous life, all she wanted was an answer. What nonsense do you say? I won't dislike you, nor will I want you. I, Hanyu, am not a half-hearted person. Once I have made up my mind, I will live with you for the rest of my life, so you are not allowed to even think about these things in the future, if it were normal. Hearing what Wenyu said, Hanyu had already started to deal with Wenyu, but at this time he had to answer patiently. That's what you think now. Who knows what will happen in the future? When you like it, we will be together, and when you don't like it, we will abandon each other. Isn't that the case for men? Who can guarantee what will happen in the future? Wenyu felt a little reluctant. Forgive me. Hanyu's face turned dark again. This little thing just needed to be dealt with. He was getting bolder because of his pregnancy. He was simply making trouble unreasonably. What kind of person is your husband-in-law? Don't you understand after all this time? Don't blame me for being rude if you talk about this in the future. You really think I can't deal with you if you are pregnant, right? Hanyu tried his best to endure it. This little thing has become more and more lawless since becoming pregnant. When the child is born, he will settle the accounts again. Wenyu shrank her shoulders. It seemed that she had annoyed someone, so she changed the subject wisely. What about Kong Ling? What are you going to do? He is a cunning guy, maybe he is thinking of killing him this time. How to plot against you? Hanyu's eyes darkened a bit after hearing Wenyu's words. He did not answer Wenyu's question, but gave a domineering order. I don't want to hear that man's name from your mouth again. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 170. Wenyu wanted to refute, but seeing Hanyu narrowed his eyes dangerously, she changed her words wisely. If you don't want to mention it, then don't mention it. I'm worried about you. After all, that man is so cunning. If he really deals with you secretly, it's always better for you to be prepared in advance, so as not to suffer from his conspiracy. Okay, I know your intentions, I will be prepared. You have to believe in your man. Hanyu rubbed his wife's head. He himself is not a gentleman. Although he has a bottom line as a man, his means are never restricted. It's just that he never wants his wife to know these things, so as not to scare this silly girl. Wenyu felt much more at ease after hearing Hanyu's assurance to her. As long as Hanyu is prepared, there should be no problem. Although Kongyu is powerful and despicable, his means are still a little worse than Hanyu's. So you have been holding this matter in your heart for the past few days, and you have made yourself look like this. Hanyu has not forgotten his ultimate goal. Thinking that his wife has been eating and sleeping poorly and has become so thin just because of some unrealistic things that happened in dreams, and it was another man, and almost affected the baby in her belly, he has an impulse to catch her and beat her up. Wenyu knew that it was not just this matter, but it was also the majority of it. What she was most afraid of was that Kong Ling would affect her current life, so when she heard Hanyu ask this, she nodded somewhat guiltily. She also knew that she had done something wrong, but once a person enters a certain state, it is easy to get stuck in a dead end and can't get out of it. Moreover, this is a demon that has always existed in her heart. Now that she has said it out, Although it has not completely untied the knot in her heart, she feels much more comfortable and her heart is no longer so heavy. Seeing Su Wenyu nod, Han Yu unceremoniously flicked her forehead with his fingers. Su Wenyu cried out in pain, but she didn't dare to complain. She knew Han Yu's temper. If she wasn't pregnant, Han Yu would not let her go so easily this time. Han Yu saw Su Wenyu pouting and covering the red mark on her forehead, and he hugged her over and rubbed it for his wife himself. He felt so complicated in his heart. He didn't know what sin he had committed in his previous life, and he fell into the hands of this heartless woman in this life. He loved her so much, but this little thing couldn't feel it, and made himself like this, which made him feel distressed and helpless. You can tell me anything in the future. There is nothing that can't be solved. Don't keep it in your heart anymore. If I find it again. I dare not, I dare not. I'm afraid that you will be angry if you know it. After all, I have done something wrong, and I am worried that the person will be bad for you, so I will think about it. Su Wenyu was relieved lying in Han Yu's arms. This matter was finally over. With Han Yu's advice, Su Wenyu slept better at night and was more energetic. However, her morning sickness was still not cured, but the symptoms were milder than before. Nanny Chen and Nanny Li tried their best to find all kinds of food, and Su Wenyu was finally able to eat some. Dr. Lin took Su Wenyu's pulse and said that as long as Su Wenyu's heart disease was gone, morning sickness was not a big problem, and it would be fine after getting through it. Many pregnant women had gone through this, but Han Yu was still worried and tried to rush back every day. Han Yu was investigating and guarding against Sikong Ling. Sikong Ling also had the information of Han Yu and Su Wenyu on his desk. Sikong Ling read it many times, including Han Yu's. The man who had confronted him that day, although the information showed that he was just a farmer who relied on his mother's family to sit on the 8th rank official, based on that one encounter on the street, Sikong Ling could conclude that Han Yu was not an ordinary person, and sooner or later he would be successful, and heroes were made in troubled times. It is unwise to become an enemy with a man like Han Yu. Although Sikong Ling is a bit absurd sometimes, he is not a person without measure. This time, he unexpectedly cannot let go of a pregnant woman. He knows that this is unwise. Sikong Ling is not prepared to do anything to Su Wenyu, and has no plan to bring her back for the time being. He just can't help wanting to know more. Sikong Ling clapped his hands, and a black figure appeared in the room out of thin air. This is the power that the Sikong family has been cultivating secretly. Since the death of the old Sikong family head, this power has been handed over to Sikong Ling, directly bypassing the father of the current family head Sikong Ling. Except for Sikong Ling, no one in the Sikong family can know or use this power, which is also a guarantee for Sikong Ling to succeed the position of the head of the family in the future. After all, the current head of the family has more than one son like Sikong Ling, and there are a lot of legitimate sons and illegitimate sons. Sikong Ling is the only grandson that Mr. Sikong admits to value. The reason why he did not pass the position of the head of the family directly to Sikong Ling was because of the situation in the court. Sikong Zi was used as an open target. In fact, whoever has this power is the real head of the family. What do you want, master? Keep an eye on this person for me and tell me her movements at any time. Sikong Ling handed the page of Su Wenyu's information to the man in black. The man in black looked down and executed the order without asking the reason or reason. Husband, you are back. When Han Yu came back that day, Su Wenyu greeted him eagerly, and Han Yu knew that his wife must have something to ask for. Han Yu knew it well but did not ask. Instead, he accompanied his wife back to the room and asked her what she had done that day and the baby in her belly. He fed her something and then slowly spoke. Tell me, is there anything you want or anything you want me to do? Husband, I want to go to Lingyan Temple. Su Wenyu knew that her physical condition was not suitable for going out, and going to Lingyan Temple was the result of careful consideration. However, although she had decided, she still had to get Hanyu's consent, otherwise she couldn't even leave the gate. The people sent by the Su family were just watching her, and they only listened to Hanyu's orders. She couldn't give orders at all. Go to Lingyan Temple, Hanyu frowned after hearing Su Wenayu's request and refused without thinking. You should know your own body. It's really not suitable to go out before giving birth. I want to go after thinking it through. I always feel irritable and uneasy in my heart these days. It won't work if I continue like this, so I want to go to Lingyan Temple and ask for the blessing of the Bodhisattva. I always feel that only in this way can I feel at ease. Su Wenayu always remembered the peaceful feeling in front of the Buddha that day, as if her soul was cleansed and she could calm down, and she also wanted to pray to the Buddha. Hanyu looked at Su Wenayu's serious expression, as if this was something very important to him. He wanted to refuse again but didn't say it. He hesitated.